Do you ever hear?
There's a total disconnect now between the ruling group and the masses.
I hate psychology.
Clear out.
They're the same worm-like characters.
Analysts,
Fuck you with your stupid arguments.
they should not bother us.
Democracy. All of this just works.
Vote for the generations who are coming.
Fully dynamic game engine.
A millennial video essayist.
Always support strength
Constant craving.
and identity.
I haven't yearned. They are a disease of our time.
Clear them out. You're voting for what your grandfather and father fought for.
I sit and yearn.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show, the weekly gathering here inside the Longhouse for the most sensible centrists. And around the fireplace tonight, I have with me, as always, my co-host and Klaus Schwab's top guy, Putin's enemy number one, Ludwig Path. How are you doing?
Yeah. Thank you very much for being back here. It's always a pleasure. So, yeah, I'm unironically a WEF supporter now. So that's our show is mostly going to be EU news from now on, with some other WEF content. So I hope we're not going to agitate our viewer base too much. There's always a little bit of viewer capture going on, but we're going to do like a full Hunter Avalon and now just kind of like shred the social capital we have. So I'm looking forward to that today. Yeah.
Sounds like a good time. Well, you have been sort of putting, I think, for the past week, putting the sensible into sensible centrist, trying to sort of advocate for having some perspective on what's actually happening. And I find it honestly a bit refreshing. My feed was becoming a bit stale, as it were. But one thing you did present this week, and I think we'll just jump straight into it because we have a bit of a hodgepodge of content this week that I wanted to share with you all. And, of course, some EU news. The first thing is something you shared, which was a survey, I suppose. You said, you're getting seated at this lunch table. Where do you sit? A, B, or C, and why? And what we're seeing here on the screen, for anyone not seeing the screen in front of you, is a table with a man sitting on a chair in the lower left corner. And then from the upper left, we have A, B, and next to him in the lower right, the C chair. And the question is, where is the sort of socially acceptable or strategically appropriate place of sitting down? For me, it's an instant B. I tend to have a pretty wide stance when eating. During lunch break, when I sort of just inhale my food in like a 5-minute window before I go back to the coding mines, so to speak. I would go for B, then followed by A if B is taken, and then C last. But I gather from your posts that you disagree with this.
Well, not so much. I honestly just needed some clarification. I was quite comforted by the fact that I got so many people answering B because I mean, I've had the situation where I'm the guy sitting in the bottom left corner, and the next person to be seated sits down at B, and I've just been wondering why, like why. Because like instinctually I would always go sit at A, like no matter what, or if A would be occupied, then I would go sit at C.
Especially if it's a coworker, the last place you sit here is C.
Well, I mean,
if it's another man, it also kind of becomes a bit gay, to be honest, to sit at C.
I always have this kind of thing where I feel like you have to establish. What do you call it? I have to establish authority. There's some lingo that I've forgotten that they use with this kind of stuff. But it is this sort of alpha male thing where you have to kind of. I really believe in, especially if you're like new at a job and something, or like the other men are going to test you. You have to set yourself like very close to the other man,
can
And if
understand
you
that, yeah.
if you hesitate doing that, like the people pick up on it as some kind of it's some kind of weakness there. I mean, it's the same thing I think with like showers and urinals and stuff like that. Like you can't hesitate too much because I feel like other men pick up on it.
True. Yeah.
So I think the best thing, the safest thing is like if you're in the shower, you need to be the first guy to get naked, and you cannot hesitate.
I agree.
I mean,
Yeah.
I'm
If
getting
you
too much
hesitate,
into the
if you hesitate, it becomes weird. And
it,
someone in the
it, it,
chat apparently
yeah.
thinks that when I say that sitting at sea is gay, they took me quite literally, which I'm sorry. Maybe it's my cadence, but I wasn't actually being serious.
No, but I mean, A is usually I just regardless if they're comfortable or not, I'm just going to sit here because like I don't know, like when people for me, if I'm the guy who's seated first and they go sit across from me, I'm just wondering if there's something wrong. Say if they got in the chair, I mean, if we put another letter on the seat to the right of B, for example, and they sat like maybe 2 spaces away from you, at some point you'd start to wonder if there's like something, if you have some body odor problem or there's some other thing that some issue they have that's unspoken or something. That's just kind of my instinct when
I might because I'm picturing when I'm looking at this, I'm picturing sort of the lunch, the cantina at where I currently work, and the tables there are actually quite small, or maybe not small. I'd say they're not very wide, right? So the distance between the person from A to where he's sitting to B to where he's sitting is not actually that great. So I can easily have a conversation just as well with anyone so sitting in any of these configurations. So for me, sitting at B as the default is actually maybe a sort of local custom to the place where I'm working at right now because of the the thin tables. Sorry.
Well, I don't think it's local considering the response I got. It was overwhelmingly B for all respondents, and as like with my experience as well, I just get so many people sitting at B. But at least now I know it's not because they think I'm weird. Maybe they do, but it seems like that's like just their go-to, like the logic in their head says that that's what they're supposed to do. But in these cases, I mean, most of the time the table gets filled up regardless, right? So there's almost kind of no, I don't know what like the point is of going to B if like there's just going to be somebody else sitting at A in like
Sorry,
a few
I
minutes
think
or
I lost
something.
my audio. One moment.
Is there a connection issue?
I'm back. Okay.
Yep.
Here we are. Sorry, you were saying.
Did you miss anything? I mean, let's say, I mean, I understand the rationale for sitting at B, but in most of the cases, there's going to be other people sitting at the table as well, and they'll somebody's going to take the A spot, maybe in like a minute or 2 minutes or something, and then
Exactly,
in my mind, you might as well just start like you're filling up a bucket or something. It just goes in the. I'm not doing some kind of crisscross sewing pattern. I'm actually just stacking, like I would be stacking boxes or something. That's kind of where I go mentally, but I see this kind of crisscross pattern with a lot of people. So it was good to get that cleared up, that people just do that because they think it's a logical thing. To me, it's still a little bit strange, but maybe I'm the odd one out. Maybe I'm the one who's weirding people out by always sitting at A or something.
Sitting next to them.
I'll keep that in mind next time.
I don't think you're weirding anyone out with this. Just for fun, sometimes I spot. I remember you showing me. You stumbled on some Facebook group of like Minnesotan boomers talking about like Norwegian food because it's from the old country, right? And one woman who was like really happy to finally have her like flatbread or something come in from Amazon.
Yes, stuff that is like off the shelf, standard grocery store stuff. That
it's
she
the
wanted
most standard thing you can get here. Yeah, and I just, it's not very interesting. I just enjoy bookmarking whatever like Americans have a fit about, the brown cheese. But also, I noticed that, I don't know, there's something about the way this tweet is constructed you see what I'm saying? Like the question marks, the dots, the I don't know.
And here found out blood
It's
Brunost the other day.
millennial, I guess.
Norwegian brown cheese made from like ... caramelized whey. I can't begin to imagine what it tastes like. Caramel cheese. Hey Norway, what's up with the
Yeah.
caramelized? Is that what it's made out of? It's like protein powder or something, or some.
It might be a translation issue.
Yeah, maybe.
But maybe let's see here. No, it is whey. I think I think it might mean multiple things. Not sure. The other thing, and this is on you, Luddy Path, because a couple of weeks ago you sent me a question. I mean, we have covered stuff like Dave Ramsey before, right? And you asked me one day, and I think you might have mentioned him before, but I didn't catch on. Is like, hey, have you ever watched Caleb Hammer on YouTube? And I was like, no, what's that? And it's this guy on YouTube who, I mean, bear with the absolutely horrible. Oh, I'm sorry, ad. Can't really do anything about it right now. We're doing it live. Bear with me on the horrible YouTube thumbnails, but he basically sits down with like people who come on his show for like an hour, where he goes through their finances, which they've sent ahead of time, and then he basically just kind of lectures them, more or less. And of course, as it were, for content, usually pretty bad people end up there, right? But I've been absolutely, and the only word I can use for this is which I've learned thanks to the Longhouse, is I've been absolutely gooning on these videos. There's something about listening to, this guy tearing into 20-something-year-old women who have basically pissed away their youth financially, and watching him hammering through like all of these layers of defense that, I mean, for any of you who have been in relationships with women have a tendency to build these sort of layers of defense that you have to get through if you want to get to the core of issues sometimes, especially when it's hitting at their sort of center. And so I only watch the videos he put out where he lectures women, because watching any videos he does where he talks to a man, it's just kind of sad, right? It's just kind of like, yeah, I just get the feeling that when he's talking to like a 30-year-old man, it's kind of like, yeah, he should know better. This is just kind of, your dad should have taught you this, right? I'm not sure what it is. And
So it's the kind of the fresh and fit, or the you like Michael Knowles yelling at the OnlyFans girls or something. I
don't like that either. It's just because he talks to some men as well who are quite young, and it doesn't jive the same way. It's just it just feels more, because the men kind of just go either like, oh yeah, but I actually know what I'm doing, or they just go, yeah, I'm a retard, right? And then it's just kind of sad. The women put up all these layers of defense that Caleb has to smash through, and that makes this infinitely more enjoyable.
I see what you mean there. I mean, for me, like, the fun here is to sort of see these kind of case studies of millennials, right? I mean, where do they end up? What's the millennial financial problem? With Dave Ramsey call-in show, or if it's like Dr. Phil or something, you have like the typical boomer, divorce, RV, lake house, motorcycle stuff. But like with these people, they have all these weird consumer habits and stuff that they use money on, and the kind of lifestyles, and
all of them. Yeah.
And like I just like to see the stereotypes, because I know there's more than one of those people who show up there who are just kind of stuck in that thing, just to see, okay, other people who are my age, what are they doing right now, and how are they making it? And I mean, you are seeing them settling into jobs, because they're, it's people from like general, I guess, Texas area. I mean, it's interesting with Texas, especially because it's considered like the sort of Lone Star State, the kind of hardcore cowboys is what I imagine in my head. But it's apparently it's like a very big tech sector now, and when you have tech and this kind of big tech environment, it's just kind of soy all the way down, even with the sort of very free market, cowboy atmosphere surrounding it. It's just like these total, like, chubby soy boy people with these weird, I bought anime pillows for like $200 every month. Big guys who show up there, and at least that's what I get out of watching this. I can just sort of
It
see,
must have
okay,
been
here's a guy
actually,
who.
when I think about it, it must have been after our show where we did cover some people who had like plastered their entire apartment with like anime figures and stuff.
Well, it's stuff. Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
It's stuff like that. I mean, he had some personal. If you want to watch one of the guys who are probably a little bit more complicated, you should watch the one with the Asian dude who was in the thumbnail. He doesn't interview that many Asian men. I think you'll find him immediately. But he's just has the. I feel like I've met that guy before. Especially I've been studying abroad, and I've also been doing work as a sort of assistant lecturer, right, at a university, trying to teach mathematics and introductory physics. And like I've met that Asian guy. It is like a particular stereotype of Asian men who like they have a sort of way about being. I don't know how I would even explain it in a Western sense, of just being like confused in a way that Western men just aren't. It just seems like they're able to just like, they just are not rooted into anything, and they're just able to mess up every single aspect of their lives, yet simultaneously they have a family that is sort of like keeping them in line enough to kind of to keep them alive in a sense. I don't know how these people would survive if they didn't have like a larger
to get
family.
a sense that actually, you're never hurt enough to where you actually make sort of where you learn something, right?
Yeah, because their family sort of will ensure that they will have like a job at a 7-Eleven, or they will have like some type of income or something, and they're sort of kept in line like that. But they just have no sense of autonomy at all. Everything they do is just a total mess. Their thought process is completely illogical. They just kind of skip from one idea to another. It's just like a general, it's just like this absolute chaos mentally that I don't understand how these people even breathe, to be honest. Like if they were able to forget breathing, they would do that. I wish I had some kind of monologue prepared here. I don't know if you're familiar, if you talk to a lot of Asian men, but I don't want to rake everybody over the same.
That's not something I can brag about. No,
but it is just
but I think I understand where you're going. Yeah. There's something about sort of the white Western man's confidence that do sometimes land him in hot water. And it's great if you're conquering the world, but if you're spending all your money buying Funko Pops, having the confidence doesn't really help.
It doesn't really help. No, the Fortnite confidence or the Hearthstone or whatever. It's just not the same thing. It's a little cheap.
We have a super chat here from Chris Luno from, I think that's the Serbian Dinars again. He asks, why are millennials so interested in 90s cartoons? Nostalgia, like that is the most important thing happening. Why is our generation obsessed with consumer fetishism too? It's hard to say our generation, because I feel like Gen X has just as much of that stuff, if not more to a certain extent. Sorry, were you saying something?
I can speak for myself, like with the 90s cartoon stuff. I mean, I was alive during the 90s, but you're basically too young to sort of pick up anything in terms of what's going on culturally. And when we got into the 2000s with the culture that existed, I felt like I missed out. Like with the 90s cartoon stuff, whether it's like the sort of edgier, like the Ren and Stimpy stuff, or whether it's like the Batman animated series, or it was just edgier in the 90s. Everything was, and I liked it. And I felt like it's sort of, damn, this is so cool compared to what I had. So I was just kind of stuck there. I just couldn't move on with it. I guess that's kind of like how I justify it to myself. But I've seen it as like it's a very broad phenomenon. Like the indie game scene, for example, is just saturated with guys like me who are just keep like replaying the same video games, sometimes even based on the like these types of cartoon shows and so on. So it's very recognizable. I mean, the consumer fetishism, I'm not really sure.
That's something I noticed with sort of my literal contemporaries is especially sort of like the vintage Nintendo stuff. That is like very prevalent. Like you have to, like a lot of guys will get really into owning like vintage consoles. And I do remember at some point going to, some guy's house. I think I was studying and we were going to go out and we were just going to pregame at his house. And, he had a couple of these consoles and, he fired them off because it's just like it's the game, you play like Super Mario Bros. 2 or whatever, right? It's the big one on one of these like Nintendo Entertainment Systems from the 90s. And I remember playing it and thinking like, man, this is kind of shit. This is not like I remember it. So that's pretty much my last interaction with that stuff. Maybe at some point I tried tinkering with like emulator stuff just from like a programming perspective, but that was more just for the interest of like taking stuff apart than the video game itself, to be honest.
Yeah, no,
People in
I'm
chat. Sorry.
so yeah, I'm pretty big into a lot of retro games, but like you said, a lot of it doesn't hold up. If you play it again, there's
I guess
been
I'm
certain
like 20.
changes, and
I guess I'm like 15 years too late to complain about retro video games. I think there are a couple of channels who have done that already.
maybe, yeah.
People in chat are getting upset that I used the word gooning wrong, but please go on. It's great for engagement. Let's see here. Culture ended in the year 2000. Well, Russell Burnham, if you listen to our show called, is it 2000 Sewer Culture? I think that's what we called it. We talk about how basically the feminists were right when it came to Gamergate. Things were pretty crappy in the mid 2000s. The quality, or I guess the messaging, was kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, just to sum up the general point of that episode is that there were actually discussions being had when you had like the kind of mass proliferation of video games, and these consoles entering every single home, where you're going to have the discussion of, okay, where do you draw the line, basically, in terms of video game content. And I guess sort of the consensus that's being reached is that if you can't prove that like every single person who touches a video game console will go out the next day and do like a full Columbine, then it's okay. So we don't have to have a discussion about actual values or what's cool or what's not cool. I mean, it was brought up, but it was kind of just shut down again. We're just gonna roll it out, like oxycodone or something. It's kind of how I feel about video games and films in the 2000s in general. It was just really crass, really trashy, just really kind of over sexualized. And I'm not that surprised that there was some like movements like say like the Gamergates, and even though I thought it was super gay at the time, I did not like having my hobby being interfered with. Like as an adult now with a child, I'm sort of looking at it and it's like, I kind of understand it. I just wish there was somebody else.
To frame it as a purity movement, right? It actually makes more sense. That being said, I mean, it did reveal to a lot of us, that this thing goes way deeper, right?
Yeah, I mean, we had, previously we had the episode on Australia, and like that's one of the few countries where they actually did have the debates. They had conservative governments, and the conservative governments took measures to either censor the games or make them less accessible, which made it like super uncool if you were watching game reviewers in the 2010s or something. But like as an adult, just looking back at it as just a purely pragmatic political decision, that was actually very good. That's like a good quality conservative decision to make. You don't make it illegal, but you make it harder to get a hold of for certain demographics, which is something you should do. I mean, if you want to have an interest in protecting the innocence of the nation or something, I mean, okay, just like you do with cigarettes, just make it a little bit harder to get a hold of. And you've sort of taken a stand then and said that, maybe it's not okay to torture people for fun in video games or something. And even if I can't prove that you're going to kill yourself the day after, maybe it does something to your general attitudes that's not good for society,
Yeah. We have another super chat here from Chris Luno, 500 Serbian dinars. In Serbia, people still want to get married and have kids, but it seems when I visit Western countries, people of my age, which is 32, want to just live in a pod and never grow up surrounded by anime. Why? Well, I think I can counter your
Jamie, bring up those
experience with my subjective experience of knowing a lot of people who want to be married and have kids. So,
Jamie, bring up those birth rates.
bring up the birth rates.
Bring up the birth rates, Jamie. Let's just. I'll see if I can find a fertility rate chart to see if the Serbs really want to get married and have kids.
Oh, I'm sorry, I was muted. It's being a bit slow at loading for me, so Ludwig, if you can have a look at it. My point is that there are certainly people in the West who, just want to live in a pod and never grow up surrounded by anime. But there are also people in the third world who are like, young men who just want to go to the pub and never get a girlfriend. So let's not be too quick to sort of judge the entire West based on a couple of sort of, how should we call them? Unkind people or something.
Well, I tweeted about this, previously, that if you look at birth rate statistics and fertility rates in Western countries, there seems to almost be an inverse correlation with how based the country is and the fertility rate of that country. Where, say, someplace like Poland, for example, that kind of it ticks all of the boxes. If you look at what's like the right wing checklist of things that you want in a country, well, they're religious, right? Very Catholic, based. They're ethnically homogenous and nationalist.
The Albanians are beating you in birth rates, by the way.
Like they have all of these things that you think, low crime, ethnocentrism, religion, and the birth rate is, drum roll, 1.3. So it's almost as bad as Italy, right? I mean, the French are beating them. Norway is beating them. Like all of these kind of like more permissive liberal countries are beating them, not by much. But you would think that if you believe in a lot of this kind of right-wing wisdom, that they would have a huge leg up in terms of fertility, and like you're just not seeing it, which is, I find it interesting that you find, I found a map, but it's kind of hard to see.
Let me see if I can bring it up here. The point isn't to just, say that because Serbia doesn't have great birth rates either, doesn't mean that Norway doesn't have that problem. Of course it does. But I'm just getting a bit tired of blaming everything on millennials who just want to watch anime. At this point, I think we have to look at it as almost a civilizational feature that at some point we have done something that sort of flips a switch, because this seems to happen with a lot of civilizations that quote unquote get too big, right? And we can debate about what the reason is behind it. This is a GIF. Let me see if I can bring this up here. Should be replaying. So what are we looking at here? We're looking at, so they're all hovering, around 1.3 to 1.7 is what we're seeing. And at this point, Norway is actually, Sweden, France is quite high up, right?
Yes. Well, this is like 20. Yeah, you see it's hovering, because if you look at the year, it's sort of changing.
Yeah.
Right. So we'll see how it's developing here. But you look at, France is very good. Sweden is good now. Norway is tapering off a little bit. But, a lot of these Eastern Bloc countries that are a lot more ethnocentric, I think there's a lot of bugmen there. I mean, yeah, and worse. And like places like Italy and Spain are just absolutely bottom of the barrel. There's like 1.2 or something, which is the I don't know how much are you getting out of this kind of like Brothers of Italy, Maloney based mother stuff, when there's just no kids, there's just old people living there, and the kids are moving out. Like, that they're asking that question, like why Maloney can't do anything, because she can't turn around the wheels of civilization. Basically, you just end up importing the immigrants anyway, because you can't like handle the top heaviness of the economy. That's kind of that's kind of the only solution I see to why things end up being the way they are. I just you get in there. So okay, we're gonna solve this birth rate problem now. I was like, okay, we try to make some programs, and we'll give some maternity leave and some tax breaks, and nothing.
Some money
Nothing
for them
happens.
programs, yeah.
So what do
Let's
you
see
do then?
here.
You know,
Yeah, I don't know. We have one more. We have to get on with the new stuff. But one more sort of funny thing here is an article I found earlier this week, which is that a private university in Norway, the VID, University of Science and Technology, has received 1 million kroner, which is not that much, from its research council to bring in more male managers. They want to increase the proportion of men in its health subjects and get more men into top positions at the university. The Research Council is to support the University of Science, VID University of Science, with 1 million kroner to attract more men into top positions in health and social studies education, the university has written on its website. 75% of staff in teaching and research positions are women. It is even more lopsided in health and social studies programs. The award from the Research Council is a part of their Balance program. According to the council, the program will support research institutions' work to improve gender balance in all of Norwegian research. We have many men in various job categories here at VID, and that's great, but it also means that we don't have that many men. That's, well, I'm sorry. Maybe it's a translation thing. It's just like doi. Yeah, we got our top women on this one. At some units, we can see that there is a particularly low proportion of men in professorial and managerial positions. We have now received funds to find out why this is so. We can't just hire more men, Luddick. We have to do a study. We have to find out why this is so, in addition to launching a number of measures aimed at men, such as qualification grants, mentoring schemes, and courses aimed at university lecturers who wish to apply for research fellows, says the Vice Chancellor for Research, Gunhild Odden, on VID's website. Together with Trina Powell, who is a senior advisor in the research administration, she will lead the project to get men into the health professions. We believe that a better gender balance on these courses will strengthen both the courses and the research associated with them. Will in turn benefit both society and the future potential for students and VID as an institution. According to the VID, the main aim of the project is to develop and disseminate knowledge about gender imbalance in health and social studies and increase the proportion of men in teaching and research positions, both in general and in first, top and management positions. Another goal is to increase the proportion of men in scholarship positions and in skills courses aimed at the future senior lecturers and professors or docents. Docents? I'm not sure how you say that in English. Furthermore, a sub-goal of this project will be to explore why fewer men than women participate in existing skills development measures, as well as make employees and managers aware of the consequences of gender imbalance. So we're going to send the women on the gender studies courses. That's good. Let's see here. I'm looking forward to getting started on this exciting project. There's been a lot of talk about smashing or the existence of a glass ceiling that prevents women from reaching leadership positions. And now we will investigate whether there are such barriers for men. So it's not saying that, like, oh, actually, in this case, the glass ceiling maybe didn't exist. It's like, well, maybe there's a glass ceiling for men too.
We have to have some other name for it. Let's see if the comments can come up with something. The male glass ceiling. There is a clever wordplay.
What's another
there,
name for the male glass ceiling in the health and safety departments? There are several measures to improve the gender balance in academia, but they're often about the fact that there are fewer women and many men. It may look as if the trend is reversing, for example, when it comes to the use of gender points. Now, a gender point is when you're applying for university courses, you will actually gain bonuses depending on where you're applying based on your gender. So it's basically affirmative action to a certain extent aimed at women. So if you're a man and want to go like into nursing, you'll get a couple of points bonus. Let's see here. You can add, here they say you can add 1 or 2 points to your grade point average for certain studies.
Which is just, I mean, it's you can get more people in there, but if they're underqualified and they're getting in, I mean, just for that reason, you're just going to get like bad candidates.
Well, and to top it off, it doesn't seem to be working, right?
Nope.
We've talked about the the sort of the equality paradox, which is a frequent talking point here in Norway, right? Where
I wish I had bookmarked it. I talked to you that I saw this thing on Twitter that it was like a clip from one of these Fresh and Fit podcasts with Michael Knowles, and he's talking to 3 women who do OnlyFans, and one of them was actually quite articulate, and she had a lot of arguments about, like, all of these sectors, like, say, service-based jobs, nursing jobs, and so on, that keeps trying to do outreach to, and it's very similar to this, even though this is more kind of on the state level. She was talking about, like, they're doing it even in the private sector, trying to get more men in, but they just can't do it. And she was blaming it really more on this kind of standard conservative talking points that it's gay for a man to be a nurse or something, kind of throwing it a little bit back into Michael Knowles' laps, right? And I mean, it got me thinking a little bit, because these things ping pong back and forth in these Twitter feeds with, people just dunking and reacting and stuff. And like, even with a lot of guys that are sort of tangential to our spheres, they do end up sort of like just kind of proving the point that they're just, even though the jobs are there, they're just not even interested in taking them because they think they're too gay. So that there's clearly something there. It's just really about, like, who, to what extent is this just some kind of natural biological thing, and to what extent is this something that, it's an expectations that's been built up that can actually be socially engineered in reverse.
Well, I mean, would you say women are shying away from IT because that makes them gay?
Well, I think it's something to do with, like, the.
I'm just trying to apply this to something else.
Well, they are. I think they are. It's just the kind of, in fields that are very crowded with one gender. I think it's particularly IT. I see more women in IT now, but it was a period of time where I think if you looked at all disciplines of engineering and people who go into the sciences, IT was just completely male dominated.
I think it still is. I mean,
and yeah, it still is male dominated.
I was
but
taking
it was
IT
just
courses at university, and there were, like, out of like 100, let's say, there were like 4 women. And when you went on to do, like, the more in-depth technical classes, right, the more code heavy, I mean, it dropped even further.
Yes, but if you compare this to, say, other fields like electrical stuff, or other kind of engineering, products engineering or biological engineering or something, I mean, you're going to see there's a larger amount of women. So I think IT is something like, in particular, with being male dominated. That's what I remember from going to uni. And, like, I was wondering at that time if, like, there's just too many, Richard Stallman styled guys in the field. Basically, it's just like a certain stereotype of men that it's kind of have crowded the field. And I'm not saying it's wrong, but I think it's just generally seen as sort of unattractive for women, or they just feel like it's so crowded with a certain type of man that they just don't see themselves in that environment. And I think, especially with something like nursing or something, I don't think, like, men would be opposed to the idea, like, doing specific types of, if you relabeled it, you don't call it nursing or anything that's kind of has, like, a female coded language, but something that, let's say, like, you would be a doctor's assistant or something, like a dentist assistant, or
I'd say
something like that. Yeah.
The nurses I've known tend to specialize. Like, I've known, like, 1 or 2 male nurses. They tend to specialize in, like, anesthesia and stuff like that, right? Where they basically become doctor assistants, right? While the women I've known who go into nursing go into more like care, right?
Yes, and that's, I mean, that's what I was thinking about too. Is that I think, especially in these standard nursing jobs where it's say, like, it's like 98% women or something, even if you like the job in theory, it's just going to be so difficult to acclimate yourself to that environment. It's just so, like, saturated with estrogen. I can't explain it any better. I've tried to do jobs like this, and at least that's been my experience, where I've not had any formal education, but I've done, like, because I've been connected to other people, I've been able to do some kind of care work. And I thought the job was okay, but it was very difficult to be in a lunchroom where you're the only man sitting at a table with like 20 women. For example, it's very, very,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know,
That sounds
uncomfortable. I don't know. It's not something that I want to do for the rest of my life. I can tell
I'm
you
trying
that,
to
yeah.
imagine doing that for like every day of my life, and I can understand. Yeah, I wouldn't want that. um, I would have to go. I would have to run out of like, oh yeah, that's crazy, quite fast, right? Uh-huh. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh no, really?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
really.
Damn, that's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it's either like you end up with two. It's sort of three types of women. Either you get these kind of like overtly nurturing women who will, basically like every conversation is about how cozy something is, or you get like these types of women who have like who just use humor to sort of cover up how gross their job is, or you get like the third type, that's the kind of like the spinster who just sit and talk about the men they met on town or something. It's really one of those three, and I don't like I don't like any of them,
Either.
to be honest. It's all just kind of a pain. It feels like even more work. I just rather, I'm just going to skip lunch and go back to carrying cripples or something, as somebody said in the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know
Well,
that feeling.
It's well, it's one thing to like talk to women. It's not like I'm unable to talk to women or have a conversation with a woman, but it's having to sort of have women as the majority colleague, which creates an issue. It's something about, the cycles that you have to go through, both
And
figuratively and I guess literally.
it's kind of the framing as well of the conversation,
That.
where it's like you're in like a female dominated profession talking about female dominated stuff. You're a little bit out of your element. You can't really kind of like wow them with anything. I feel if you're sitting in the same suit and you have the same kind of like plastic shoes and all that kind of stuff, it's I don't like it. I don't like that frame of going in and talking to a woman. I like to have be able to, you have something that you have to kind of like brag about or something. It sounds like I'm a douchebag, but I don't know if you understand what I mean. Like you have to have something that you
I
can
absolutely
kind of
understand what you mean. Yeah.
use to sort of differentiate yourself or bring the attention back to, because I found it was harder to talk to women when you have, let's say, like you're teenager or something. Right. I mean, when I was a teenager, I would just try to, okay, I know how to play the guitar, and I would just bring it back to how good I was at doing that or something. But when you're in an environment where it's really just about like you're on their home court, in a sense, doing a job that like they are good at, and that's what most of the conversation is going to be about, and it's very hard to kind of bring the attention to yourself as a man. In that conversation, you just kind of become the sort of spare woman. That's just, you're just kind of there because they
Right.
couldn't find another woman to fill the position, in a sense. So it directs the flow of conversation in a way that it's I don't think it's favorable.
Well, if you don't want to do that, I mean, in the future, Ludwig, there might be other options for you, or there might be no option at all. Because some of the EU countries are starting to gear up, as it were, increasing their conscription, or flirting with the idea of implementing conscription. And you've gathered some data for us tonight.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's what I'm going to do instead. If I get to choose, it's either going to be like nursing or fighting Russia. I'm going to get my drone skills in order.
Yes.
We got to just show up at the Donetsk with my own drone.
But at least we'll have, fresh produce at the supermarket and like coin. What is it? The coin return thing. Yeah.
Well, I'm fighting
Inshallah,
for
may his
my
armies
returns.
come soon. Yeah.
Let's see here. Yeah, if we lose, at least my kids will get to see the the coin locked shopping carts, and the seed oil free produce at 1/10 of the price. That's going to be great. So let's see. Yeah, but I mean, with conscription, because I was looking at some articles and some stats there. Maybe you could look at the EU military size bit just to put things in perspective.
Ah, yes. Yep.
Because this, I mean, this is a topic that's been floating around. You know, I thought we were going to talk about it maybe 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, but it's still on the radar. This is not something that's been dropped by the regime, quote unquote. And you see a lot of discussions around it. A lot of it, which I found understandable on Twitter, but also kind of insufferable in a way. I mean, there was a tweet that I liked where, there's a lot of like millennial men who will get into a midlife crisis because they feel like they've not, well, like say they've not done anything militarily. If you're not like you're never killed a man in combat and you're sort of too old to do it or something, I think
Right.
you might get the opportunity with conscription. But if you let's say if you zoom in on this one here, because it does kind of show the sad state of things. As I understand, like most European countries, they moved away from any kind of conscription, mandatory draft, anything like that in like the 90s, 2000s. And like the actual total size of the armed forces in the European countries, it's just very, very diminished. And it's looking, I mean, this is uncomfortable to look at if you consider both the possibility of Russian aggression and also the possibility that, say, the United States and NATO was going to retract. But that's what the mood seems to be in the United States, both because of internal problems, economic problems, also because of the current mood. America First is very hot right now, and we can't necessarily rely on their support, but like that's the reason this graph looks like this, because we've sort of relied on the idea that the United States would provide
explicit
military aid. It would just continue forever, so you could divert that money into welfare programs or trade programs or really anything else. But you're sitting there then with kind of a chicken shit army, and okay, now we might have to think in terms of nations again. So what are you going to do? And you don't even have a conscription. So let's see here. You could look at the other chart. Not that one, but the it's
Anyway, which one did you want?
Let's see the military.
The Economist graph?
Yeah, the conscriptions around the world here. Let's see number 4.
Conscriptions,
because I wasn't aware of this before I looked into it. That I mean, we live in Scandinavia, and Scandinavia has like a certain conscription model. I wasn't aware that this was unique. But like, say, Finland, Sweden, and Norway have, here you see it with the color codes, right? The blue is like no enforced conscription, like none at all. It's just completely voluntary. Even the U.S. has a totally voluntary army. I was not aware of that. In a few countries with completely mandatory conscription, although, I mean, that's with an asterisk when you see, Finland having this kind of more elaborate conscription model. It would be nice to have Burkhardt here so he could explain a little bit more about it to us.
How heavy.
But
I mean, I assume it's something that's got something to do with Russia, most likely, considering their history.
Very, very likely. But I mean, in Scandinavia, you are expected to sort of take 1 year service, and then they kind of use that year of service to filter out the people who they think would be good fits for the military, and then try to bring them upwards to build up a force of kind of more specialized troops. That's kind of been like whether it's the Norwegian, Swedish, Danish models of doing things. And I wasn't aware that was kind of unique for us, because you look at the rest of Europe, whether it's like Germany, France, Spain, like really everywhere else, there's nothing like that at all. It's completely volunteer based. So there are other countries that are talking about, trying to implement the Scandinavian thing, where you have to bring in, when people turn 18, you just have to bring them in for 1 year, and then try to move them up in the system from that. But even that is sort of like, it's almost a little bit too little, too late when you're looking at the current situation. I mean,
if we're talking total war, I mean, of course.
Yeah.
But considering just geography as well, I mean, it's hard to defend something like Norway without just numbers. But that also makes it harder to attack. The problem is that, the potential enemy is Russia.
Yeah, the potential enemy, of course, is Russia, and I mean, we've gotten into just so many kind of retarded discussions on Twitter generally, where it's people have just kind of taken this, especially I think the British DR, who's just been, in my opinion, is completely insufferable on Twitter lately, where it's just really like this kind of complete, gay empire focus, and there's just no kind of broader view of what's going to happen after that, or what's going to happen, say, with other countries. So let's say we were able to retract this of the kind of gay empire system. Okay, what's going to happen after that, in a sense, and what about other European interests? It's just like this complete love-it-hated relationship with the United States, and like you have to, and because you hate the United States, you have to be a Russophile or something. It's I mean, I've talked about this previously, but like Tucker Carlson keeps jamming on his fucking like clown world reporting, like we talked about with the reverse Yeltsin.
Wait, where's the? I sent you a tweet right before the show started. Hang on. Let me just share this real quick. Is Burger better than Banan, and Banan better than Burger? That's your choices, boys.
Is that, I don't know if they use FaceApp or something, but I just love the Putin orangutan thing. It's let's say what's this guy like, fart whiff? What's wrong with how Tucker interviewed Putin? Well, it was it was a very softball interview, but like no, the bad part was the grocery shopping segments afterward.
It wasn't anything wrong with the interview. Anyway,
the idea that you go to a poor country and then you're like shocked that prices are lower in that country, and you start making sort of a point that this is like a point of radicalization. Like, you need to radicalize yourself because like stuff is cheaper in a country where people are poor. It's something that is supposed to, I don't know exactly what Tucker is even trying to do with this stuff. Like, he's just trying to radicalize like the lowest IQ part of Red America before the election or something.
It's like I don't get what.
Yeah, I don't even understand exactly what he's trying to do, because it seems like he was more interested in promoting Putin than Putin was in trying to sell himself to the U.S. in these interviews in particular. Like, Putin even talked about it like after the interview, that he wasn't even sure he was happy with it, and he did not want to really throw Tucker a bone in terms of trying to play along with the stuff that he wanted to do in that interview. It was just kind of, it was disagreeable. That's how I would have experienced it. But like, you can't really stop this kind of QAnon American wave from just jumping on, like Putin is like the best thing ever, or I want the cheap groceries, or the fucking coin operated cart or something.
The funny thing was that, and I tweeted a bit about this, is that when I saw that video, I had a moment where like, man, I haven't seen one of those coin operated carts in like 15 years or something, because we just haven't been using them. Now we're just doing nothing, right? You just returned your cart like a normal person. We're just too white, I'm sorry, to be able to do the coin operated carts. We just have to do regular carts, and people just return them.
Well, yeah, if people return them, then I mean, what's the point of having coin operated stuff? I could see in the United States, when I lived there for a year and visited it, I see people just like throwing these carts in like the side of the road. You see it everywhere. So I understand if you're coming from that and you go into Russia and see that they have these kind of coin operated things, then yeah, that's pretty cool. But
wow, supers, we gotta become like Russia.
But I mean, like the people who are saying this stuff is super cool, like you had these sort of stone toss comics that like they're pointing at these places in California where you have to ask the store manager to come and open like a locked like it's like this kind of glass steel lock if you just want some toothpaste or something, because they're worried that black people are going to come and steal their stuff, right? And it's like, that's like, oh yeah, this is totally awful. But when you're doing the same thing with like the coin operated shopping cart, then it's like, oh, this is like base new technology or whatever. It's I don't know where to begin. It's again, I'm not even sure I understand what Tucker is trying to get
thi-
out of this stuff.
I think it's
just
I think it's
confusing.
literally just look at the inflation numbers. That's what he was sort of trying to get out of this.
Well-
But the whole veneer that he wrapped it in is kind of weird and sort of like, wow, guys, look how great Russia is. You know, don't you want to welcome them if they invade or something? It's just kind of weird.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well. I mean, for the people kind of not in the know, it's been taking the rounds on Twitter over and over. Like, I mean, I know that some people come on the channel and they watch, they just watch YouTube, right? So that you often miss a lot of context. But it's gotten into this kind of dialectic where people have thrown in, like, say, like Jon Stewart, who jumped in the ring to try to sort of defend America, where he said that, well, maybe we have dirty subways and expensive food or whatever, but that's the price of freedom. So.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
I mean, the problem is that, he's kind of jumping into the same dialectic by just acknowledging the point that,
I don't want to have this
Russia,
conversation because it's fucking retarded. That's the point.
I mean, for the people, purchasing power is not the same as price, right? If you look at like the Russian median income is like 1/10 of what they have in the United States. They do not have more purchasing power, which should not be shocking if you understand a little bit about economics. And of course, I think Tucker understands that as well. So I'm not sure why he spends so much time doing all this stupid shit. And like, I mean, in the light of the stuff that's been happening, like with the Gonzalo Lira stuff and the Andrew Tate stuff, and like the guy who had sex with Obama or whatever, like it reaches new lows constantly. I'm at a point where I want nothing to do with the kind of like Red American project. At some point, I'm just going to be focused on like European affairs, and I'm just going to try to ignore Tucker as much as I can. But yeah, let's see. I mean, with the conscription stuff,
I think Russia for many years ranked sort of at the lower end of the Big Mac index. I'm not sure how it is now. I'm sure the Big Mac isn't there, but they can probably find something similar, which, for those who don't know, is like this. You basically look at how much a Big Mac costs compared to your salary, something like that, which is basically a shorthand for purchasing power.
I mean,
and it ranks Russia. It did rank Russia very low, like some 5 years ago.
Just seeing a comment by Nordan on here that I'm getting mad at non-existent Q-tards. No, I don't think you understand Nordan on. These are like prominent people who are like, DR influencers who are just running to the defense of Tucker Carlson on this stuff. It's really quite impressive what I've seen today on Twitter, especially like with the I mean, I don't know what's his name, like Konstantin Kursin or something, the guy who was one of the hosts on the Trigonometry show, who made up this concept of like the right wing woke or something. It's like this cringy idea. But I watched the video, right, because it's been shared around in our spaces and people are just running to Tucker's defense. But what this Konstantin guy was doing was just explaining that, like, okay, like the stuff that Tucker is doing just doesn't make any sense. Like, if you consider purchasing power and a lot of the stuff that is being said, it's just like pure nonsense. It's similar to the kind of like third worldism you saw in, say, like the 1930s with the Great Depression in the United States, where people like talking about like Stalin's miracle or something. I mean, I thought it was a kind of like sound comparison, even though I think the guy himself is completely cringy. But you have like almost every like, big influencer in our space is running to Tucker's defense on this, and just trying to like explain either that we need to inform you that this Konstantin guy is Jewish, or that he is like the son of some other Jewish guy from Russia, or that he is gay, or like everything but trying to just explain what the hell Tucker is doing, or trying to actually deal with the subject at hand. You have to just run immediately to his defense. It's become kind of like Trump in 2016, where Trump just keeps doing more outrageous stuff, and you have to find some kind of, I don't know what you want to say, like you have to go into all these kind of yoga poses and stretch so you can find a way to explain this. That's where you get the 4D chess memes to like explain why Trump is doing all this retarded stuff. And in the end, we found out that he was just doing stupid shit. There was no actual plan behind it, right? So there's no need to defend it either. That's kind of how I feel. And I feel I'm kind of just like done with defending the what do you call it? These kind of like
Mainstream figures,
mainstream
so to speak.
red
Yeah.
American influencers, in a sense, by thinking that they have some kind of like secret super plan beneath this kind of nonsense. That's what they're doing. I mean, it's just like idiot populism. That's all it is. And I feel like I understand Richard Spencer a little bit better every day that passes. When I'm sitting on Twitter, honestly, that's
And soon you'll
that's
be,
just where I'm at.
Schwab's
Yeah.
number 1 guy.
Yeah, I'm working my way. I'm going to take Yuval Noah Harari's position as the left hand man, folks.
I'll
This
see
is
you at like a TED talk, selling
demons
transhumanism
in,
or something to Silicon Valley.
demons in Davos, folks. The left hand man. Stay
Demons
tuned.
in Davos, yeah. Oh,
That's but I mean, like with the conscription stuff as well, you're getting into very weird territory. Morgoth had a very good essay on this kind of stuff, but it's, it becomes strange because you have like a right-wing segment of people that are all about sort of heroism, and they like nationalism, martial culture and so on. And then we're getting to the point, okay, well, maybe you have to then conscript to defend your nation, but none of them are going to do it. And like, they're not even going to do it reluctantly. I bet that almost everybody who is an active influencer in these spheres are going to have some excuse why they're not going to conscript. Like, it's either going to be like this sort of wall of text about how, well, it's just an economic zone and I'm not going to do it, or no Russian ever called me racist, or some stuff like that. Or you have the like, say, like guys like, the PUAs like Red Hawk and guys like that, who will basically, who sort of said, well, yeah, I'm never gonna conscript if if it's too hard for me to get like sister wives and a cheap house on the prairie or something for my government, then I'm never going to defend my country. Which is, I mean, a lot of these people are just very opportunistic anyway. I never had the impression that any of these PUA people
it doesn't have to go that far. It's just like, well, I mean, why should I fight for a nation whose women won't, doesn't want me? I think that's just going to be the argument. It doesn't have to go further than that.
No, but I see, but guys like that would never conscript anyway. I mean, if you look at you can never frame the idea of like dying to defend your homeland or something as like a rational transaction where you're gonna come out of it like this kind of
either you're up for it or you're not.
Handshake. It is really about self-sacrifice in the end. That's sort of a little bit beyond the rational, and like, you could look at any war throughout history. There would have been some reason that you could have had to not show up, where there would be like the Rothschilds are funding both sides, or it's something like that. You would have always had some kind of excuse you could have come up with. But in the end, a lot of people didn't make that excuse. They actually did say that my loyalty to whatever country I have is going to go beyond the gripes that I have with the internal leadership or whatever incentive structure there are. And when you have people like, say, Red Hawk or somebody like that, who sort of laughs at people who try to defend women from getting beaten in the streets or something like that, it's like there's like simps. People like that would never join the army. They're never going to actually try to fight and die for something they believe in. Like, it's just pure opportunism. So it's kind of pointless when they're sitting and like, oh, well, well, I bet you feel sad about doing this regime anti-white stuff or this kind of transgender stuff because you lost me as a conscript, when they were never going to do it. A lot of these guys were just never going to show up to fight. So I am conflicted about this, because I also have a lot of gripes about gripes about the system, quote unquote. But in the end, there's something kind of there's something that's lost there when like nobody's showing up because they all have some sort of excuse. And I don't know what's coming to. I don't know if that's kind of like more degenerate than some of these other things. It is certainly the sign of some very deep problems in society. I don't know if you have a view on it.
I almost feel like it comes back around to when we talked about the birth rates, that something at some point, and I know this is very vague, but it almost feels like a feature, right? A feature of mass civilization, a feature of human civilization, that at some point, something just clicks, and it's just kind of like, well, people just start doing stuff that's destructive, that leads to a fresh start, so to speak.
But do you have that
Uh,
graphic? If you look at the links in the private chat there, like the first link, because they have some Gallup poll
oh yeah, the
stats
would you fight for your
on,
country thing?
yeah,
Is it?
actually the
Yeah.
willingness, because there seems to, there's a very measurable drop um in like actual willingness to fight in wars in general. And you could, if you bring up the chart, you can see it. So, and I mean, the spheres we circle in are very small, I think, compared to the general population. So there are other people who are also very reluctant about it, but I assume they have very different reasons for it.
Right, and I do understand from the sort of dissident right perspective why you would be reluctant. But what we're looking at here, I don't have the right website open. I mean, is a nation or nationwide problem. It's not just us; it's everyone else as well, right? And you see it in a lot of the European countries are either lower, sort of more pinkish, or they are gray. And you have Norway here on the top, which is also completely grayed.
Yeah, I don't know if gray means that they don't actually have data on it, because they weren't able
That might
to
be it. Yeah.
collect. But I think you have some tables lower in the article that gives a little bit of more of a clear view. If you scroll to the bottom there.
Is it this one?
Yes, this one here. You could, just roll the wheel and we could zoom in a little.
It won't let me zoom in further than this. Hang on a moment. Let me see if I can bring it up bigger. One moment. Here we go. Is there anything in particular you wanted to look at, or is it just that what we're looking at here is that,
Yeah, the third worlders are
well.
the third worlders are showing up, but Finland
Yeah.
is well, damn, they're doing well. I mean, they're probably at the top in, like, if you look at first world nations
yeah.
there. That conscription stuff is working for them.
China is doing well. Turkey's doing well. Ukraine is
Finland
doing
is
well.
like higher than Israel. Actually, I'm surprised that Israel doesn't have more.
Sweden
like
is at
larger
55. That's not bad. It seems like they don't have numbers on Norway. That's why it's grayed out. Yeah.
Yep, I assume that.
Let's see here. So, Chris Luno again for 500. Siberian dinar. Sorry, I keep messing it up. Dinars says, wouldn't it be Serbian dinars? Wouldn't it be better if we get colonized by Russia and become autonomous oblast? Well, I mean, if you want to get colonized by Russia, then go ahead, my dude. I particularly don't want to be colonized by Russia, and for that matter, I don't want to be colonized by America either, right?
What's that? The meme with the guy. I think we should improve society somewhat, and then the guy comes out of the well, and it's like, well, you participate in society.
It's
like
it's one of those. Yes, I'm not trying to say it as a cop out. I'm just.
No, I mean,
I'm worried that the grass is looking greener on the other side, which is the other side being Russia, and because you feel like the opportunities in a colonized by Russia world are greater, and I'm not really sure if that's true.
No, I mean, my point is that they have another version of that meme, right, where it's like the guy who says, I think we should improve society, says, I would rather not be destroyed by Russia for no reason, and then the guy comes out of the well and say, did you know that the US has also done bad things? It's like
right.
That's the kind of attitude that I feel like a lot of people have when it comes to this question, is like Russia is just totally based on every front. Like it's Russophilia. That's the best way I can explain it. Like seemingly very smart people have just taken this kind of completely Russophilic line to the point where it's like, yeah, Russia is cool because they have cheap groceries. And then if you point out that, well, it's the purchasing power, it's actually lower. Well, Americans have to pay rent to Jewish landlords, so that means that they're worse off. And then you point out that Russia also have Jewish landlords that they have to pay even more money to, and most of the Jewish landlords that live in the United States and New York come from Russia. But it's and then like the
Yeah.
third cope is that, well, okay, well then Russia's food doesn't have seed oils and like citation needed or whatever.
Yeah.
They will do anything. It's become like this very spiritually Jewish, spiritually Russian thing where they will do, just like Putin, they'll do anything but actually answer the question. They'll go into like a 30-page triad about some history stuff when you just ask them a simple question, but they can't actually just answer the question and deal with the problems.
Norton says, I feel like the listener right is a lot more evenly split on the Russia question than you're presenting it as. Maybe it is.
My impression is that the American DR, they don't give a shit. The British DR, they seem to have developed some Russophilia, and like if you go to these other spheres, maybe who are bordering on Russia, then of course it's a lot more even. Evenly split here, but I mean, you could even see that in the stats here. I think in terms of the United Kingdom are at 27%. In their like willingness to go in the military, it seems to be reflected on the stuff that I see on Twitter. In
Charlemagne here says, I've never seen anyone who matters acting Russophilic. I don't think it's a stretch to simply point out that Russia is a real country and the United States isn't. Okay, that's a fair assessment. I can understand why you're saying that. I'm not sure if you caught when we were talking about Tucker's sort of grocery trip. But the problem I'm having here is that, okay, maybe Russia is a real country and the United States isn't. And I'm sorry about the United States not being a real country, but that doesn't mean my country should be invaded. Right?
I mean, is
that
Russia
doesn't mean I should cheer that on.
Real country? Right? I mean, it's a very, very large country. I mean, like, 12 time zones long, just kind of like cram different ethnicities into it that have to be kind of smashed down on quite regularly by, the regime, the Russian regime, so to say. So I don't know. I mean, how much really ethnic?
Leo's. I guess Leo is just pointing it out, or maybe it's something. Maybe we just have a bit of a Russophobia going on here in the Scandinavias. I don't know. I'm sorry that the United States isn't a real country, but that's not an argument for me losing my country.
Yeah, I don't even know
guess that's
what
all
it
I have
means
to say.
that Russia is like a more of a real country. I don't even. I'm not even sure I accept the premise, to be honest.
Fair enough. Let's see here. I think what Ludwig is complaining about is an expression of the human tendency toward dichotomy. If you hate the gay, then Russia or China seems like the only other option. Well, I mean, is it that simple, Ludwig?
Well, I mean, like after World War II, if you are in Europe, you would either be siding with Russia, like the Soviet bloc, or you would be siding with the US. You're going to be subjugated to larger powers. At least you have to find yourself in a geopolitical relation,
right? Yeah.
Where you have to play second fiddle or be colonized, if you want to say that, or just kind of live as a subsidiary to a larger power. Like you're not going to do. You have a country with 5 million people or 2 million people. You're not going to do hardcore nationalism, self-sufficient nationalism in that sense. So you just have to pick what you think is going to be the better deal.
Yeah. All right. Let's go back to talking about conscription. I feel like we've gotten sidetracked a bit talking about the specific sort of Russia thing. I guess this is more just talking about conscription as just a measure of people's willingness to defend their country. And looking at this stat here, I mean, it seems to be that people are losing their will to fight in that sense. Now, conscriptions versus or conscripted soldiers versus like veterans or standing armies. There's probably a lot of people online who are better than me that being armchair generals who can say a lot about that, but I'm sure conventional military wisdom says that you can probably get there's like a ratio of conscripted soldiers to one veteran, right? In terms of efficiency. But I'm not sure if that's going to be enough with the small numbers we do have to be able to defend ourselves, right?
Yeah, I have no clue. I mean, somebody brought up the nuclear option. I think that's probably in the cards with the way things are, like European nations developing nuclear programs. to deal with the issue, especially when you're talking about the ability to have some sovereignty. So, I mean, that'll be interesting to see in the future.
Yeah. Charlemagne says, I just don't get the point in pointing out that Russia is gay. Whatever way Russia is gay, your country is just as gay, no matter which one you live in. That might be true, but we're not really pointing out that Russia is gay. We're pointing out that some people seem to think that, if you're against the United States, you have to be for Russia. I guess it's as simple as that. Maybe we're gays for for refusing to take a stance here. I just find it very hard to pick a side here.
Yeah, I think
And it
Russians
seems
are,
like some people-
gayer than
some
us,
people-
to be honest.
I
I'm
just
not
feel
ashamed
like
of that.
some people are a bit too quick to basically go with like the opposite, right? I guess that's it. Let's see here. Is there anything else you wanted to cover from your graphs here?
No, I think we've looked at all of the relevant charts, but yeah, I just thought it was an interesting thing.
We had something on. It's just the size of European armies. I mean, we already covered that. Let's see here. What's this? Let's see here. Nukes have to work, though, says the Sen of Sen's Fortress. Nukes have to work, though. We in the UK found this out this week that we are too stupid to launch ours. What's this about? This competency crisis hitting the nukes. Maybe someone can follow up.
Maybe we need to find that news story. I've not read that, but yeah, interested in stuff that's going on in Europe. So maybe post a link or something.
Let's see here. I'm seeing something about Trident missile failed. Here we go. Okay, I found it. So this is from BBC News. Trident missile test fails for second time in a row. A test firing of a Trident missile from a Royal Navy submarine has failed for the second time in a row. The missile's booster rockets failed and it landed in the sea close to the launch site, according to The Sun. So it just kind of flopped, okay? Blah, 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 blah. Mr. Shaps, who is the defense secretary, said he has absolute confidence in the Trident submarines, missiles, and nuclear warheads. This is highly embarrassing for both the UK and US manufacturer of the Trident missile. British tests of Trident missiles are rare, not least because of the cost. Each missile is worth around £17 million. And the last test in 2016 also ended in failure, when the missile veered off course. Test-fired missiles are not armed with their nuclear warheads. So that's not boding well.
You're not going to make it, son. That's.
I don't think we're going to make it at all. I guess if the war breaks out, we don't have to worry about any of this, right?
Yeah, the competency crisis. What's that? The quote that World War III will be fought with sticks and stones or whatever. Yeah, that's actually true because we can't get the nukes to work. The competency crisis hits. Sumer technicians can't really do anything.
Absolute confidence of the board of directors. That's the line before you know he's getting sacked. But this is the other way around, right? The defense secretary has the absolute confidence of the Trident missile. Let's see here. Let's blah blah blah. Submarine had just had a more 70-year refit. In a written statement to Parliament, Mr. Shops confirmed an anomaly did occur during the test on January 30th this year, but said that the Trident was the most reliable weapon systems in the world. It might be. Maybe all the others are shit. He said the test reaffirmed the effectiveness. The test reaffirmed the effectiveness of UK's nuclear deterrent, in which the government has absolute confidence. I mean, the government can't really say anything else. Just kind of weird to say that it's like it reaffirmed the effectiveness when it flopped. The submarine and crew were successfully certified and will rejoin operational cycle as planned. So it was a success in the way that they know how to do it if they were to do it again. Okay, good. On this occasion, an anomaly did occur, but it was event-specific, and there are no implications for the reliability of the wider Trident missile systems and stockpiles. So it's all good. It was a one-time thing. Twice, but it was a one-time thing. So if we just fire all... How many do they have? Like 50? Trident missiles number. That's probably not a very... They actually tell you about how many there are?
I didn't get that in the article.
192 warheads do they have. That's kind of weird that they would, have that publicly available. But so I guess if they fire all 192, it's gonna, some of them are gonna hit. What didn't you get?
No, the number of total missiles.
No, it wasn't here. I googled it.
Oh, I see.
And then I was kind of surprised to find that I could just Google how many warheads the UK government has in their Trident missile system and get a seemingly accurate answer. But let's see here. The paper said that the Trident 2D5 missile was intended to be fired. Okay, so just the cause of what went wrong remains a top secret, the paper reported, but quoted senior naval sources say the missiles suffered an in-flight malfunction after launching out of the water. Okay, so it's not very interesting news here. Yeah. Let's see here. Just remember, the US SAC still use launch computers for the land-based ICBMs that run on those giant floppy disks. Well, in a way, they're probably, more reliable. I'll actually put money on like some programmer who wrote something 60 years ago versus like some weird college grad, writing JavaScript for for defense systems today. The abstraction layers we're operating on in software these days are arguably making us much worse at writing quality code that does what it says it should. So I actually don't mind the low-tech approach unless it sort of slows down actual sort of reactivity of the defense system.
Yeah.
I can understand
we don't need them to run on Windows operating systems.
We don't.
It would just make
we
it
don't
worse,
need it. Yeah, just make it work. Why my PHP-based missile launch service? Well, actually, I did read today, and I shared this with you, that there was a local firm that had been contracted by the government to build. It's a local firm that builds like tiny homes, those like modular-based small houses. They'd gotten like a 50 million Norwegian krona, which is, I guess, 5 million USD roughly, government contract to build like refugee centers with their modular homes. And I'm going to get in on that. I'm going to start a business where I teach those refugees JavaScript, and I'm going to get my piece of the government pie. That's what I'm going to do.
I mean, it's crazy enough to work, right? Even though it's straight from the Sam Hyde.
Yeah, the more I talk about it, the more it's kind of like the more I sort of talk about it, the more sort of possible it sounds that this could happen, right?
I mean, you could just apply for a grant and say that, you're proficient in code or whatever, and you have an initiative to try to use the untapped resources of the refugees or something. There's some person in these bureaucracies that are going to believe it. I think so.
Oh yeah, definitely.
If you file the right paperwork, so you could probably make that money. And I mean, nothing's going to come out of it, but if they can't learn
like that, yeah.
if they can't learn the language, then they can't learn the programming language. But
that's true.
You could definitely get money for trying.
Oh yeah, it's not about actually accomplishing anything. It's just about getting my piece of the the cheese.
Refugee industrial complex.
Exactly. Yes, but they can't replicate the giant floppy disks. Ah, well, there's your problem, right? It's the Concorde problem, right? Eventually, we'll just have people who know how to repair the engine. We can't make new ones. So, Jorsa says, do you guys actually believe that Russia would invade Norway? There's no historical grounds for this as far as I know. Well, I mean, the point is that, are you willing to, quote-unquote, support Russia on the grounds that they won't? That's all I'm saying, right?
Yeah, because I trust Putin 100% about his historical dialectic theories about why he's going to do things. I mean, if you're bordering on the country and they're expanding and they see a good reason to do so, I don't see why they shouldn't. Honestly, like that's the question I'm asking. Like, why wouldn't they do it if they have the opportunity and if the military is so small? And like the Russian country, the Norway has a lot of resources.
And
right?
we
I
might
mean,
not even be talking about a military operation. It might just be that, the cultural empire shifts to Russia, right? And we pay our
say
tithes to them instead of the US, right?
yeah, I mean, they say they take Finland and Sweden or something, then we're dealing with them, and they're basically Russian subsidiaries.
Yeah, and
so
before you know
sort
it,
of,
all of the oil
in that
money
system.
has to run through like Russian subsidiaries, and we're done, right? We're screwed. So it doesn't necessarily have to be an actual invasion. So we're talking about allegiances, not necessarily invasions, but of course we were talking about conscription. So I understand that it's getting a bit muddled, the topic, and I'm sorry for that. But we are almost at an hour and a half, and that should do it for this week. As a bit of a preview for next week, I think we're talking with Dissident Nomad about having him back on. So watch out for that. He might come back on to talk about some of his projects. Luddic Path, anything you want to shill?
Yeah, go check out Praxarchy. So new articles coming now. A lot of interesting stuff.
Right. As for myself, I usually put the Twitter profile in the description down below, where you can watch or look at my shit posts, and as well as the Element Matrix channel, where a lot of us hang out and you can chat. I've been quite busy lately, so I haven't been chatting much in there, but I do pay attention, and there's a lot of interesting stuff being posted. I'm also, after we had our Australia stream or record, Chris Gard approached me again and said that we had to do another one. He wanted to do one again because of the time zones. He was recording late at night, and he wanted to record one in the morning because he said he's going to be much more energetic and much more difficult for me to post on YouTube, I suppose. He's going to be saying he's going to be dropping all the no bombs that I have to edit out. So in the future, we might have another episode with Chris Gard, but I'm not sure when that is.
I think that
All
would
right.
be
Anything
cool.
else you want to say before we leave, Luddic?
Yeah, I actually watched Blue Murder on Chris Gard's recommendation, and I enjoyed it. If he's watching, then yeah, thumbs up. It was great.
Very good. I'm gonna have to watch that as well. Okay. Well, thank you everyone for watching, and with that, I will leave you with our customary outro video.